You can speak now, doctor.
Hello, everyone. This is Christina, Dr. Christina Kutra. I am working in the College of Business as an associate professor in management. One of my specializations is in human resource management. So today the seminar will be with regards to the human resource management. More specifically, I'm going to start talking about how apparently the external and internal environment influences decision making with regards to planning for human resources. So I don't know how many of you are here anyway, so in case that the participants are here, I would like to pose some questions before I start speaking myself, because I would like the seminar to be a little bit interactive. To my information, some of you, or the majority of you, are working in HR. So it would be a good idea if you could share some of your own experience. Hello? So the first question that I'm posing is, what is it that you understand by human resource planning? And do you think that planning for human resources is essential? Yes, no, or what is that you think? Kindly leave your answers or your questions to start with on the Q&A box or on the chat box. I have 5 participants in here, but I'm not quite certain. Okay, so if you guys would like to pose a question, please do so. In the meantime, because obviously I don't have many people attending the seminar, I will start speaking myself. And in the meantime, if you want to contribute something on how human resource planning is implemented in the companies that you might be working, and if you think that it is important, I will be more than happy to chat with you and share experiences live. Okay then, so what is human resource planning now? And why do we need human resource planning? Human resource planning is about forecasting. Human resource planning is a process. It's a continuous process that companies are apparently using in order to forecast how many employees, numbers of employees, okay, will need to carry out operations in the present and in the future. We do that because all companies apparently they're looking for sustainability. Sustainability is directly linked to the future. So in order to assure sustainability, we have to plan. And in this case, we have to plan for numbers and specific roles, okay? In order for a company to do that, it needs to have a look to start with on the strategy of the organization. Every single organization is unique. It's a unique entity. Because of that, the strategy is unique as well. Every single organization has its own unique mission, vision, goals. And obviously, if we consider the mission, the vision, and the goals, we will need the equivalent numbers of people, and we will need the equivalent specializations in order to achieve this mission, this vision, and these goals. In this endeavor, in this forecasting, it is very essential to consider the environment. the external environment, which is outside the organization. And by outside the organization, in terms of external environment, we mean political environment, we mean the economic environment, the socio-cultural environment, we mean the legal environment, the technological environment, and environment as in nature, as in ecology. So all these factors are essential when the human resource department apparently has decided to start planning for human resources. The internal environment as well is very, very important. And by internal environment, in this case, we are talking about the strategy, about the the internal strategy of the organization, okay? And also we are talking about the organizational culture, the same that the strategy of the organization is unique, the same way organizational culture is unique as well. I'm going to talk about the internal factors after I have spoken about the external influences, influential factors. Okay, let me start with the political legal influences in here. I have decided to discuss the political and legal influences together because at times they are interrelated, interconnected, because the legal environment depends mostly of the politics of the country. So because of that, at times, and mostly, as I said, one equals the other and vice versa. So the political and legal environment is influencing human resource planning, and mainly is influenced by the political stability or instability of a certain country. It is influenced by the governmental laws, by the governmental policies and regulations, which obviously policies and regulation and laws are related to recruitment and selection, training and development, industrial relations, trade unions, if there are any trade unions in the country, because not all countries have trade unions. And they deal with matters the trade unions deal, those countries that they don't have trade unions, directly at the ministerial level or through other associations that represent employees. Taxation also is part of the political legal environment, and obviously something that human resource management has to plan for, especially when they plan to recruit people, employees, for overseas expeditions. Compensation as well, inclusive of benefits and allowances, state insurance, gratuity, and corruption, among others. So the human resource management department needs to be aware and knowledgeable about all these laws, about policies and regulations, and accordingly to implement them at an organizational policy and regulation level. Failure of which might result to the company being fined heavily, or even it can lead to the company's closure. And that is why the human resource management always have to be aware of any changes in the in laws, okay? And always have to have a consulting department, legal consulting department, to consult them in case that are not quite certain about what apparently applies to certain cases, because you cannot treat all people uniformly, every single person, and especially when employees of a certain company have different nationality are treated differently as well, because taxation in their countries is different, and then obviously laws in the countries are different. Okay, with regards to the political stability, as I said, and instability, in the developing world, a change of government might mean instability, political instability, which might create riots. If this is the case, the human resource management has to have contingent plans at place, even to take people out of the country. Okay? In case the laws change, and usually in developing countries, every time that another government comes along, some laws are changing. The human resource management department needs to be aware of that, pick up on that, and obviously act accordingly. In the developed world, legislation is relatively stable, okay? And there is more consistency, there is more continuity. The laws among countries, as I said before, are different, and at times, in many European countries, for example, that they do have trade unions, it's quite difficult when the company is not performing very well to lay off people. This is because they have to compensate them heavily. Obviously, that wouldn't be a feasible option for the company, and because of that, many companies, no matter how bad they're performing, okay, if there is a very hard driving bargaining power between the trade unions and the organizations, the layoffs are halted or are kept to the minimum. However, in other countries, whenever the company is in dire straits, obviously, what the first thing that they do is to minimize the employees of the company. Economical influences now. The economy of the country is affected by customers, suppliers, competitors, and globalization at large. And this is mainly in terms of deciding to hire or to lay off staff. Regarding the customers now, whenever there is an economic downturn, a company might experience less consumption of products or services. Think about the economic crisis in 2007 and think about apparently the crisis that the COVID-19 has created. The consumption has been down because many companies have closed down. Many companies resorted of reducing the salary of employees and still keeping them in the company. Okay. So especially like if you consider luxurious good companies, in an era of an economic downturn, the last thing that people they consume is luxurious goods. So these companies apparently that they produce luxurious goods are the ones that their sales suffer the most. The easiest things to do whenever there is an economic downturn is to lay off staff again, as I said, if the trade unions, if the bargaining power of the trade unions is not high, okay? So the easiest thing is to lay off staff, thinking that apparently if we lay off staff, we as a company, we will survive, or to freeze hiring. However, something that the human resource management has to consider, human resource department has to consider, is that if we consider layoff, okay, or we freeze hirings, the existing employees might get burned out, or the quality apparently of service or a product is going to be lower, okay? And then we have to consider the high recruitment cost to replace existing burnout staff. So all these reasons at the end of the day might lead to financial losses. Also, by not hiring and by freezing hiring might mean that apparently we are depriving the company of new blood, new talent, people apparently that will be willing, they have what it takes to contribute to the company's change. And when the crisis is over, the company, if we don't do that, might find itself behind in relation to competitors who adapted to change and contributed to recruit in a strategic way. Because not all companies, again, even if they are not restricted by the trade unions, decide to lay off or to freeze hiring. They still continue hiring, okay? However, in a strategic way. They are hiring people for strategic positions and according to the strategy of the organization. Key positions, okay? They are hiring people for key positions. So it is better like for human resources to apparently create contingency plans, because the external environment, and in this case the economic environment, is very dynamic. So because of that, it's always best to plan ahead of what it might and what it might not happen. With regards to suppliers now, suppliers are those who are providing the organization with employees. These suppliers might be coming from universities, they might be coming from colleges, employment exchanges, training institutes, consultancy firms, among others, okay? So the human resources always have to be in contact with these suppliers. And as the trend has it, it is essential to formulate partnership between the existing company and these suppliers in terms of societal projects, in terms of being corporate social responsible. Competition now, obviously no company operates in vacuum, and no company operates on its own, and no company produces unique products or services. More or less, there are other companies that they are producing similar kind of products and services. So because of that, the human resources always have to be vigilant on what the competitors are doing and try to attract the best talent in order to be ahead of competition. In case that it cannot do that, then they have to train their own staff, retrain them and develop them. because again, the environment is ever changing out there because it's ever much dynamic. Look at what COVID has done again. It has created technological needs. Not all people apparently were up to scratch with video conferencing or with using virtual technology or with operating any kind of applications to allow them to work remotely. Globalization now. With regards to globalization, companies, they need to be flexible, agile, and obviously highly adaptable. So for the company to be flexible, agile, and highly adaptable, what is needed? What is needed is people that are highly flexible, highly agile, and highly adaptable. So mainly overseas expeditions now, international subsidiaries, according to research, they're failing not because of financial budgeting, but apparently they are failing because of the people that have been chosen to run these subsidiaries are not agile enough, they're not flexible enough, they're not adaptable enough. So the role of the human resource over here with regards to planning is to identify people who have these main characteristics and even more in order to carry out operations and realize strategies. Sociocultural influences. Culture affects society and society affects culture is one of these elements that apparently is interrelated, interconnected. It's exactly like the political legal one. The sociocultural is one of these influences that it goes together. With regards to society now, I will start with society, but while me talking about that, you will realize that it might be a matter of culture as well. And when I will be talking about the culture, you might be realizing that it's a matter of society as well. And that is what I said in the beginning, that a socio-cultural element is interrelated, interconnected. Companies, again, they are, which are not, as I said, operating vacuum, are highly influenced by the society, the immediate direct society, community, in that case, if you want, that they operate to start with. Then they're influenced by the nation that they operate, then the region, and then obviously the global aspect of it. These days, companies, they have to consider all stakeholders. Gone are the days that the companies used to operate without consideration to societal needs. These days, the society demands that companies are responsible. And because of that, whenever we're planning for human resources, we need to take into consideration, and as part of our corporate social responsibility, and in order to achieve sustainability, we need to take into consideration society. The norm these days is about diversity. Companies need to have a diverse population in terms of demographics. Companies these days, they advocate also for equality as well. So Equality and diversity, it is a prerequisite for organizations that need license to operate from society. They need to attract all sorts of people, and not only, obviously, well-established, experienced, and well-qualified people, but they need to attract as well very young people, because these very young people represent the younger generation. And since they present the younger generation, they have fresher ideas. So because of that, whenever we plan for human resources, we always have to allow and give a break to those who are very young and they are seeking to embark their career. Another thing that apparently human resources, they have to take into consideration whenever they operate in a certain locale is the unemployment rate. Even if there is not local talent, even if the company cannot find what the company wants and needs at a local level, it still needs to recruit people from the local level, even if they do not meet their requisites, their demands. This is because, again, because it is the local, the specific locale is the local community that gives license to operate. If the local community start protesting, obviously the organization will start tarnishing its reputation. And most organizations these days, they compete on one thing, which is reputation. So recruiting from the local community is very, very important. Whenever the company decides to lay off staff as well, it needs to gauge the pulse of the local community. If they found out that the local community is gonna overreact about them laying off people, then it should be wise for them to freeze or minimize, eliminate the number of layoffs, as again, they need the support of the local community in order to operate. The cultural element now, and why the cultural element apparently is important. The cultural element is important because apparently the behavior of employees, the attitudes of employees, the values of employees are highly influenced by the cultural background. So whenever the employees are hired, they are carrying obviously with them into the company the cultural background. So the human resources need to be aware on the element, on this cultural element that might, in a certain extent, influence the employees' attitudes, behavior, and values as well. The Japanese, according to research, they are dedicated to work. And they're very much, in terms of time, future-oriented. The Japanese culture is such that the tendency is whenever they hire people, to hire them for long period of times. And even now, many Japanese employees, whenever they get a job, they will stay in this job for many, many years. In the US, however, the practice is that employees are not going to be kept for a long time. They will be kept for as long as they're useful for them. If they're not useful for them, then they will be dispensed with. Work ethic. The culture affects the work ethic of people as well. The work ethic is linked to hard work. Hard work, commitment to the job that people do and the organization. And obviously, whenever you're working hard and you are committed on that, you are motivated as well. You are self-motivated. Achievement needs as well influences people. High achievers have high level of responsibility. They are less risk takers. They set realistic goals and take feedback as a means to improve. So whenever we plan again, we need to consider the culture of people. We shouldn't discriminate per se, that the person comes from this culture, so he's gonna be this and this and that. We shouldn't discriminate at all. We should treat people, whenever we interview them, as individuals. However, the cultural element is something that needs to be considered at a generic, informed level. Environmental influences. The locale where the company is based influences the numbers and positions of people. Over here in the UAE, for example, the majority of the population is expatriates. The local people is only 11%. So because of that, the companies are heavily recruiting from abroad. Okay? So in this case, the environment, it has to do with population. Environment as well, it would be the climate, the ecology, nature. Okay? The human resource management has to consider the climate of the country and accordingly implement changes within the organization to accommodate employees' needs. In case as well of extreme phenomena, like the virus, again, the COVID-19, the human resource management, again, needs to plan on how to carry out the operations. And in this case, what they need to do and what they have done is remote working, because this is what I'm doing at the moment. I'm working remotely because of the situation that the COVID-19 pandemic has created in our planet. Technological influences. We said that the environment is very, very dynamic and one ever changing. One of the main factors apparently that contributes to this dynamism and this change is the acceleration of technology. This acceleration of technology creates new needs. So companies need always to be at par with the needs created by technology and ahead of competition. In order to do that, they always have to consider and reconsider what are the training and developmental needs, recruit people who have high technological skills, and obviously always try to have this new knowledge out there about technological changes and bring whatever equipment is needed to support processes and operations within the organization in terms of, again, technology. Technology have many ramifications, many consequences for organizations. One of these might be downsizing, because many jobs are getting redundant. In the past, when every single company used to have like many clerical positions. At the moment, jobs be carried out by clerks. Now they're implemented by the technology. They used to have telephone operators. They used to have manufacturing operators, and computer programming. Even more lawyers, because technology apparently has developed to such a way that the first level of lawyers, junior level lawyers, they have been replaced by artificial intelligence. IBM is one of the companies apparently that has replaced its junior lawyers with artificial intelligence. Technology, however, creates new jobs. It doesn't only make redundant jobs, but creates new jobs as well in terms of robotics, information systems, database analysts, software engineering. Okay, so all these jobs they create demand for people who are qualified in these areas. Okay. So this external environment now, yeah, the economical environment, the technological environment, the sociocultural environment, the political, legal environment, and then the environment as an ecology, as we said, and population, influence supply and demand, influence labor supply and labor demand. And ultimately, this supply and demand will affect the new recruits in terms of person-job matching. Labor demand. Now, let me talk a little bit about labor demand, about employment patterns. As I have already mentioned before, whenever there is too much consumer demand for products or services, obviously, which is very good for companies, obviously the companies, they need to recruit. And they need to recruit people who will bring the company ahead of the competition. So in order to do that, they need to recruit people who have the specific knowledge, skills, and other characteristics. In order to be more direct and more specific on the people that they will need, the human resources need, the human resource management need to have a look on the strategy of the organization, as I said in the beginning, and the future projections. If the company, for example, needs to internationalize, the human resources need to forecast in terms of numbers and in terms of specializations. If the company decides to merge with another company or acquire another company, they need to think in terms of minimizing their staff, acquiring people with new specialization, and even re-engineering, which has to do with changing practices within the organization. In order to get as much data as possible for the labor demand, organizations have a look on the national employment statistics. And also, they have a look on statistics with regards to occupational and regional employment. The knowledge, the skills, and other characteristics, other requirements of employees are not really widely measured, except for education requirements. What is really important for companies is, apart from the college degree, apart from the university degree, apart from certain experience, is also soft skills. Soft skills in terms of communication, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of creativity, in terms of diversity, in terms of ethics. All these soft skills are specific important in our era, because our era is highly technological. So in order for us as humans to put our footprint where is required, we need to bring out our inner self, our inner attributes, our inner qualities. And these qualities, again, they have to do with communication, with critical thinking, with creativity, diversity management, and ethics. Whenever labor demand exceeds labor supply for a given pay rate, then we say that the labor market is tight and the organization experiences labor shortages. This is quite rare, unless, again, there are unique cases where is created by a lack of certain skills and qualifications. Like, as we said, robotics is something new, okay? So not many people at the moment, they have this qualification. So there would always be demand for the next few years for people who have this qualification and experience in the certain area as well. In case that the companies want to attract people with unique skills, unique knowledge, unique characteristics, they have to think in terms of compensation. They have to design packages that, together with a high salary, it should include also bonuses, stock options, alternative work arrangements, temporary employees as well, lower as well temporary hiring standards, increase mandatory overtime work, and increase hours of operations. Labor supply now. The labor supply is always at the moment the supply. There is oversupply of employees. Okay, because there are fewer entrants to the labor force. Demographically, the labor force around the world also, it has become, as I said, more diverse. And this trend will continue. The UAE, to bring it as an example, it's a very diverse country. And hence its employment population is diverse as well. The majority of the population, as we said, is consisted of foreign people. And obviously, to overcome the structural division in the labor market, the UAE government launched the Emiratization campaign, which mandates the inclusion of Emiratis in the job sector, particularly in the private sector. Emiratization aims to increase the number of Emiratis in the job market and their contribution to the economy. Emiratization will promote development-oriented policies that support productive activities, decent job creation. So companies, whenever they are planning for human resources, obviously in here, they have to take into consideration the Emiratization mandate by the government and ensure that a certain quota of the population within the company comes from the local Emirati community. Obviously, the human resource management has to take into consideration various employment arrangements. Gone are the days again that we used to work 9 to 5 full-time, or to work 8 hours in 3 different shifts, morning, evening, or night. These days, people work not only full-time, the classic 8 hours, as I said, but also they work part-time, which can be half of the full-time or even like less. They can also work in flexible arrangements, meaning that the starting and finishing time, it can vary to accommodate their own unique needs. People these days, they can work from home, especially now due to the pandemic, who work from home. Some years back, it wasn't even an option. And even though many companies were having it into the plans for future implementation, it wouldn't have been implemented to such a fast pace if it wasn't for the virus. These days as well, we have various alternative employment practices, like independent. We have many independent contractors. We have on-call workers. We have day laborers. We have temporary help agency employees. We have employees which are provided by a contract firm to provide a specific service. And then we have contingent employees which do not have an explicit or implicit contract for long-term employment, but they expect their employment to be temporary rather than long-term. Let's talk a little bit now about the internal influences. The two most important internal influences are twofold. One is organizational strategy and the other is organizational culture. So as we said, whenever we plan for human resources, always we have to be at par with the organization's current and future plans. We have to be at par with the organization's strategy. By making a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, we can identify our present and future needs. In order for the HR to be more realistic when it comes to their plans, they have to be always in communication with the management, upper management, leaders of the organization, and those companies that they have participative style of management to involve people from all ranks within the organization to express views and opinions. Organizational culture now. Organizational culture influences the human resource planning. Organizational culture is something which is very intangible and is different from company to company because, again, each company has different goals, different strategy, different mission, different vision, but most importantly, it has different people. And the people are the ones that mostly will influence the way that the strategy is interpreted and implemented. So, in a sense, organizational culture includes the organization's vision, as I said, values, norms, systems, symbols, language, assumptions, beliefs, and habits. And all of this will in turn influence the attitude and behavior of people within the organization. Additional factors now that can influence organizational culture include the expressed vision of executives, the leaders, the degree of hierarchy and bureaucracy, because you have some people that they have flat structure, and you have other companies apparently that they are having highly horizontal, vertical structure, which apparently is characterized by heavy bureaucracy. The history also of interactions among departments and the style of communication throughout the organization are additional factors that influence organizational culture. So deciding the types of attitudes and values that employees should have in order to achieve a personal organization fit is entirely dependent on culture. So that was the seminar, which was about, again, the way that the external environment and the internal environment influence decision-making at the human resource management department whenever they plan for human resources. The external environment, again, was the political, legal, the economic, sociocultural, environmental, and technological, which in turn influence labor markets in the way that supply and demand is influenced. And obviously the internal influences have to do with the organization strategy and organizational culture. If you have any questions, please either board your questions, or you can place your questions on the question and answer section or on the chat section.
And also, students, let us know if you have any questions that you want to ask. We can put it on the mic, and just raise your hand so we can let you speak.
Thank you so much.
I don't think there's any. There are any questions, Doctor. So, would you like to close the session?
Well, if there is no questions, I mean, we only had 7 participants anyway.
Yeah.
It's summer. Yes, we can call it a day if you want.
Yes, Doctor. Yeah. So I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay,
and
thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you as well for facilitating that, and thank you so much the participants for sparing 1 hour to listen to the cinema, to the seminar.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.